Hey everyone, Sumo Spiffy here. With the Nagoya Basho over and our Banzuke draft finished, now it's time to pick apart everyone's performance, including mine as an analyst. Let's recap the tier list. S tier. The ones that are supposed to come through no matter the difficulty, often the easiest picks of the tournament because you know how hard they'll dominate. Wakataka Kage held up his end of it, even if Churino Umi and Endo gave him a run for it record-wise down in the basement. But what about Onosato? Hiro to Umi's obviously figured something out against him, and Koto Zakura was always going to get his wins. Wakamoto Haru's mobility fell apart, but he was feeling good early. We'll give him a pass on Takanosho too, since a shot at the Yusho was on the line in their match. But Takeyumi though? Gonoyama? How does a guy bigger than Teruno Fuji get run through like that? The most charitable explanation is that Umi showed the blueprint last Basho, and Onosato still hasn't figured out how to consistently deal with getting his nipples smashed by another man's face. But Nishono Seki should have damn well been working on it with him as soon as last Basho ended. Maybe without the parades he'll have time to clean up his game. A tier. It's the same two guys doing the same damn thing. Mostly winning, but losing matches they shouldn't and leaving themselves out of any chance for a title. Takeyumi's adjusting his style and good for him, but that should make him more competitive with the rank and file, not Koto Zakura. Even then, maybe the most damning part of Koto's tournament was the fact he still can't beat this busted up version of Kirishima. I know he's got a terrible head-to-head against Kiri, but he had the same thing against Hoshoryu and he figured that out. Kiri should not be able to stand in against him anymore. 10 wins means he's still A tier, but at some point you gotta wonder when it's all gonna click consistently. Hoshoryu only lost 3 fights and almost certainly would have hit 10 wins if not for his injury, so he's still A tier as well. But like Koto, he manages to lose himself out of contention way too quickly against guys who shouldn't be able to do that to him. He's got to figure out a better approach against Atami Fuji. Atami is too big and too aware of how to prevent himself from getting thrown. I know Gonoyama gave him a whack and his arm hurt, so maybe that's bad luck, and Kiri got tricky on him. But that's gonna happen and you still need those wins. SA injury tier. This group couldn't have been more predictable. No, I take that back. Teru smashed, but Takayasu and Asanoyama at least shook things up by falling to brand new injuries despite the ones they already have. Look for Takayasu to come back strong next Basho, since it seems like he only gets hurt by high-level guys, but Asanoyama's gonna need to summon his inner Teruno Fuji if he wants to make it back to the Sanyaku again. He's reportedly going to be out for 10 months, so best case scenario, he starts the trip back up the ladder next May from mid-Sandanme. I feel like I should have more to say about Teru seeing as he won the Yusho and all, but at this point, what more is there to say? Tiny B tier. Our one guy here, Daisho, took a pretty clean ride through the Basho and locked up his winning record on day 14. We saw everything that makes him, him. He's gonna do his sumo, he's gonna do it to the best of his ability, the wrestlers who are better or know how to stop him will beat him, but that's not enough guys to put him at 8 losses. It was the most Daisho Basho imaginable. B injury tier. What a sad sight. Kirishima didn't look like anything was wrong, but it's pretty clear he was less than he was. He was the last member of the Sanyaku to get his Kachikoshi, and that was in a gift of a Darwin match with Tamawashi on the last day, but he did manage it. If he's able to improve his health as he keeps fighting, he might stick at Sekiwake for a while. Gotta wait to make guesses about a return to Ozeki though. Wakamoto Haru, his foot was obviously an issue as the Basho went on. He's normally quite good at either planning his feet and staying in against opponents or using mobility to find good positions, and he just couldn't do either very well. He was a sitting duck in the second week until his terrible record gained him matches against Meisei and Ryuden to finish, and Meisei still damn near beat him. Let's pour one out for Takakeisho though. He fought his ass off and took the approach he needed to. It was all out all the way through, but he's too wounded and it just isn't enough anymore. I didn't think he would retire if he dropped out of the Sanyaku because all his strong tournament performances to date earn him a lot of bonus money every Basho for as long as he stays in the salaried ranks. But apparently he's got elder stock locked up, which means he can become a coach and stable master if he wants, so that nice salary may not be enough to keep him fighting. C+. Let's get this out of the way up front. I couldn't be happier to be wrong about Ryuden here. The fact it came with Takara Fuji bouncing him off the Tawara is just a bonus. If you've been around for a minute, I'm sure you've heard me talk about how Ryuden is still reasonably capable, but will have dumpster fire Bashos for no explicable reason, and that's exactly what happened here. He fought 6 opponents both last Basho and this one, went 3-3 against them in May, and 2-4 against them here. Then he somehow managed to lose to everyone else except Oho. Couldn't happen to a nicer guy. F tier, he might as well not shown up. Kinbozan was very clearly not okay. I don't know if his neck is bothering him again or what, but he had no fight in him for the first 5 days. Then he started coming back, got to 3 and 5, and it all fell apart. Looking like he had no chance against Roga or Mitakeumi, who he's historically done well against, is another pretty clear sign something was wrong. An unfortunate D tier. Pretty much everyone else lived up to the ranking though. Abi was very Abi, losing to Meisei, finally losing to Wakamoto Haru, but beating Koto Sakura towards the end. Oho was a different person after the Kinbozan stare down. Koto Shoho was up and down, fought hard, got the wins he needed, and is probably going to get waxed in September if he has to fight half the Sanyaku. Midori Fuji did well for his 8 and 7, but it looks like everyone's getting wise to his tricks, not just the top half of the division. Shonen Naomi and Oshoma finished 7 and 8, but C+ isn't a guaranteed winning record and they just missed at the end. And alright, let's talk about Hirota Umi. Let's remember, even when I was D-tiering him, I always gave him due credit for fighting super hard. The issue was there were guys who he just couldn't physically beat. Going by what he weighs, he's only gotten a little bigger, but clearly he's gotten stronger because the same approach is now paying incredible dividends. Plus, not only does he have the juice to make his style work now, he looks as healthy as anyone around the top of the division. That's not me saying, oh, he's beating these guys because they're injured either. We've talked a lot recently about wrestler health, and being able to maintain your health in this sport is a skill in and of itself. Now take all that and combine it with something our current Ozeki can't seem to do: consistently beat everyone they should be able to beat. Hirota Umi's losses were to Terano Fuji, Hoshoryu, Daisho, Koto, and Wakataka Kage. All those guys should beat him consistently, which is reflected by his 1 and 14 combined record against them. Everyone else he beat. And matchups where he's still behind on the head-to-head, like against Meisei, can you really see him losing very much to Meisei going forward? Thankfully, the Hirota Umi stance haven't been talking Ozeki yet, at least not that I've seen. I don't want to get into what he's unlikely to do again. I just want to enjoy the show he's putting on. C-. C- was a thick-ass category this time, and like I said on the tier list, a lot of that had to do with Asanoyama and Wakataka Kage being at the bottom of the division. Once Asanoyama got hurt, the calculus changed. Even so, there were a ton of surprises here, none bigger than Takano Sho. This is a guy who's always had the skill and the power. He held Sekiwake for 4 straight bashos from the end of 2020 through mid-2021, despite tearing his ACL at the end of 2020. He never sat out, never got it fixed, and largely for that reason has slid in the rankings. His legs are insanely powerful, and that helps mitigate the knee issue, but he hasn't fought on 2 good legs in 3.5 years. That made this kind of performance the kind of thing that was always theoretically possible, but which no one could ever expect to see. He's always been dangerous when he gets on a roll, and he got on the rolliest roll of his career this basho. S tier, unbelievable work, and even though that leg makes it tough to bank on another winning performance in September, he'll have the benefit of being extremely effective against Kirishima and likely able to stand up against Daisho and Hirota Umi. It's probably a basho that'll go very right or very wrong. I hope it goes well. Takano Sho is fun to watch when he's winning. Now let's talk the other stunner. Where did Shura Umi find this gear? Ever since he hit Makuuchi, he's shown himself to be a hard worker, always a game fighter, but someone whose success at this level was largely going to come through effort and finding ways to refine his style bit by bit. 10 and 3 on day 13 though? And he was the last guy Asanoyama beat, so he didn't even avoid that bump in the road. Much like Kageaki, he's had numerous wins against guys he struggled with in the past, and 3 of his losses were against opponents he has no business beating any day of the week. Throw in a healthy Endo beating him, and the only weak loss he had was to Kageaki on day 15 after his Yusho dreams had been popped. An incredibly unexpected move to B tier, but much like Kageaki, he's got no one left to surprise and a much harder road in front of him come September. Of course, Shodai also hit 10 and 5, but that's the tough thing with it. He's physically capable of doing this anytime he's down around these ranks. He just doesn't. He did have a lot of historically favorable matchups, but even so, he didn't implode and give away dumb wins in a bunch of matches. The only one he really had no business losing to was Kageaki. Shodai B tier? I wish I could have faith he'd do this consistently. Hitting the 9 and 6s. Tobizaru always struggles against Gonoyama and didn't pull any shockers against the top of the division, but the fact he only had 1 loss in his other 10 matches was very impressive. Wakamoto Haru was hurt, sure, but he also lost to Oho for the first time, so those, they balance out. Even though he's like Hirotoumi in that he wins the fights he should win, I figured he'd drop either 1 or 2 more along the way, and he didn't. Very well done. Roga was also 9-6, and while I give him credit for finally getting a winning record in Makuuchi, the way the schedule was made, he was able to finish with Kinbozan and Nishikigi. It could have just as easily been Midori Fuji and Shodai, and that might have turned out a lot differently. Still, you can only beat who's in front of you, and most pairs of opponents those last 2 days would have probably gotten him to at least 8-7. Did well and good for him. But the real 9-6 stunner was Kageyaki. Looking at everyone around him on the Banzuke, he seemed doomed. Then, not only did he take his fluke win over Wakataka Kage in May and repeat it, he got 6 more wins in matchups where he was not only behind head-to-head, but after winning, he's still behind head-to-head. That's quite rare and why I'm not real high on him in September, but he still did it. Add in what turned out to be a lucky draw against Nishikigi just before Nishikigi got on a roll, and boom, 9-6 from out of nowhere. As for the rest, Atami Fuji, Ura, Tamawashi, Ichi Yamamoto, and Nishiki Fuji all fell in the 6 to 8 win range, which is core C- territory. Nishikigi's been awful recently, Gonoyama's been quite bad anytime he hits rank 3 or higher, and Sada no Umi usually struggles at the mid ranks, but all of them were in positions where winning records were at least theoretically possible. Nishikigi especially showed that in the back half of the tournament, but all of them finished 5 and 10, so they all plop into D tier. C injury tier is pretty quick. Endo looked like a complete disaster and then spun 1-4 into 10-5. I said in the initial tier list that he had good upside, but a bad Basho could go really bad, and somehow he managed to walk both paths in the same tournament. Even my most optimistic view didn't see double-digit wins though, a surprising B tier for him. Onosho went from an injury risk to straight up injured real fast, and Hokuto Fuji looks like he's just gonna grind it out on that knee as best he can. Finally, D tier. Meisei and Takara Fuji 100% met expectations here, although Meisei is clearly overmatched at Maegashira 1. Takara Fuji, I think some of us had hopes he'd do better, but it wasn't to be. Chiyoshima was recovering from surgery, so we have to tag him injured. Hard to know what would have happened if he'd been in the whole time, but if he's feeling better next Basho, he might have a chance to make some noise. He looked halfway decent this time. We'll move Mitakeumi to C- with his 7-8 record, not so much because he was oh so close to Akachi Koshi, but out of respect for getting his first 2 wins off Ono Sato and Koto Zakura. The D tier feels pretty correct though, after he won those matches but still finished with a losing record. But the most D tier Rikishi of all, Bushozan, finagled his way to his first top division winning record. It did help that he was able to fight 2 immobile Juryo wrestlers in Daiamami and Tsurugisho, but he really got after it this time. I don't know if someone got in his ear or he figured it out on his own, but from the start, it looked like he intended to hit everyone as hard as possible and make them beat him. And it worked. It may have just worked enough to squeak him over the winning record line, but it worked. Good for him. Alright, that's the tier list recap. More misses than usual, but the flip side is that we got to see Takano Sho look maybe the best he ever has, and I'm always up for a good story like that. Other than that, Yuri and I are working on something, so we'll have another video up relatively soon. Stay safe, and I'll see you then.